As I said to someone just a couple weeks ago, I was talking to someone on the airplane. And I was trying to explain, because she didn't understand, she wasn't Catholic anyway, or I think she had been Catholic at one time, and there's so many fallen away Catholics. But I was trying to explain to her the difference between the new rite and the old rite. And I was, of course, emphasizing this point that I'm making to you about reverence towards the Blessed Sacrament. And I said to her, if you were going to meet God, if you were about to have an audience with our Lord, the King of Kings, what would you do? Would you not fall on your knees before Him? It seems to, I think, just logic says that if you are going to meet your Maker and stand before God, you're going to go to your knees. And I don't understand how in the new church they absolutely tell people not to kneel down. It's not even that they say, okay, you can stand if, because I know a lot of you, even in the old rite, if your knees are bad and your back is bad, or you just can't get up if you kneel down, of course you have to come standing. You know that. But what I'm talking about is in the new rite, I've known friends of mine who, when they were still going to the Novus Ordo, they would kneel down for communion and the priest would say, get up. And if they did not get up, they were not given Holy Communion. This happened in many, many places for years and years because the priest did not want people going to communion like that anymore. So they would, I'm sure some of you remember when your last days in the Novus Ordo, you would go around, walk all the way around the church to go in line where the priest was giving out communion, right? So many traditional Catholics told me that. My last days in the Novus Ordo, we would see where the priest was and we'd walk all the way over to him because they didn't want to receive communion from a layperson, and then they did not want to receive in the hand, and they wanted to receive kneeling down. So they would kneel down and the priest would say, get up. And I had friends of mine who were refused Holy Communion. At first the priest is like, oh, you won't get up over here. But then, after a time, it was like they just said, not giving communion to anyone kneeling. And it just doesn't make sense if you think about it, as I said, logically, if you believe that the Blessed Sacrament is our Lord Jesus Christ, and every Catholic must believe that, or he's not Catholic, you would kneel down to show him reverence. And so we kneel down to receive our Lord. And the altar boy places a paten or a plate beneath your chin. And in many chapels, like this one, they even have a cloth over the railing that you put your hands under in case the host falls off, hits the paten and falls off that, it's caught by the cloth. So, we do have great reverence for the Blessed Sacrament. We do what we can to protect the Holy Eucharist from ever falling on the floor or even losing a single particle of the Blessed Sacrament. And so when you go to communion, you should have this great reverence. You shouldn't be looking around. You shouldn't be thinking about other things. You should remember that one communion is enough to make us a saint because it's our Lord entering inside of us. It's like we are a little drop of water and we're receiving the ocean. And that drop of water, of course, is lost in the ocean. Our Lord is the ocean. And we disappear. Once we receive our Lord, as St. Paul said, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. That's such a great thought to have when you receive communion. You go up to communion, you say, it's no longer I who live, but Christ our Lord who lives within me. And it makes you just realize, at this moment, I am like the Blessed Mother. I'm carrying with me our Lord. Or rather, as I said, He carries me. But those moments at communion and after Holy Communion are the most precious moments of your life. I don't say just the day, They are the most precious moments of your entire life. And that's why you should always have a prayer book, or, well, some of you don't need it, but what I'm saying is that a lot of people get distracted. They go to communion, after communion they get distracted, especially children. You see them, they don't know what to think about. They should read their missal, their prayers of thanksgiving. They should make a very good thanksgiving after communion. Because in large parishes, communion will take 10, 15, 20 minutes even. And so during that time, you make your thanksgiving. Or you make your preparation, right? Some of you might be the last ones to receive, so you're having to wait 15 minutes to receive our Lord. So you make your preparation as you stand in line, as you go up the line for Holy Communion. But remember the example of saints, like Blessed Imelda, who we all know, the patron saint of first communicants. One communion was all she had, but it made her a saint. Remember, she died at the communion rail. The only person we know, at least the only saint, who ever died right after her first communion. She died right there at the communion rail. They thought she was still making her thanksgiving. And the nun came to shake her and tell her, let's go to breakfast. And Imelda was dead. She had died of love. She had so desired to receive the Holy Eucharist. And you remember the story. She could not receive Holy Communion. She wasn't old enough at the time. In those days, you had to be 12 or 13. And she was kneeling at the railing, and the host came from the altar and was suspended in the air over her, miraculously, in front of a convent of nuns, in front of a number of other people who were at Mass. It was witnessed. This miracle was witnessed. And the priest realized that, our Lord wanted Imelda to receive him. And then she received him, and as I said, she died right there in her thanksgiving. But St. Mary of Egypt also only received communion, as far as I know, one time. Remember, Mary of Egypt was a great sinner. She was a prostitute, and she was converted on a pilgrimage. She went on the pilgrimage for evil purposes, to seduce people, but she ended up being converted in a church in front of an image, if I remember right, the image of the Blessed Virgin Mary. She was barred. She tried to enter the church, and she couldn't go in. Some force was preventing her. And then she started crying, and she went in front of, I think it was the statue of the Blessed Virgin. I could be wrong. She went outside in front of a statue of Mary, and she prayed for forgiveness. And she was allowed then to enter the church, and she made her confession. And she then was able to go to Mass and receive Holy Communion. And she was so overwhelmed with sorrow for her sins of her life that she went off and lived in the desert for the rest of her life. Nobody ever saw her again until the time of her death, when there was a monk who was himself trying to live as a hermit in the wilderness, in the desert. And he met her. She was very old and, of course, beaten down by a hard life of penance and prayer and the elements. And he was the one that was able to hear her last confession and bury her soon afterwards, I think. So, there's examples of saints who only received one Holy Communion.